Cheers. Good afternoon. Well, welcome to another tea and chat with me, Basil. I'm actually in Trowbridge Library today as well. We're doing some stock work before we're allowed to let the people, you lovely people, back into the library. So I'm here on my own in the library, right by the poetry shelves, which is very apt, obviously, for a poetry session today. I'm drinking coffee today as well, because coffee's nicer at work than at home, in a lovely work cup and saucer. I hope you like that. So today what we're going to do, last Sunday was World Poetry Day, UN World Poetry Day. So what I'm going to do today with you is share a load of international poets, okay? Mostly in translation into English. I haven't got that skilled a language level myself. So we're going to start with a lovely poem by Rainer Maria Rilke, a German, well, Bohemian poet, actually wrote in German and in French. Before I start, and there's a lovely quote he gave. He said, thinking of spring, where we are now. It is spring again, and the earth is just like a child that knows poems by heart. And that's quite a lovely quote to start off with. Okay. So here's a poem by Rilke, also about spring as well. This is just a very short one. So he's a German poet, very lyrical, wrote in German language, lived the end of his life in Switzerland, and actually wrote also in French, but famous for his German poetry. And this is translated by J.B. Leishman. It's called Early Spring. Early spring, harshness gone, and sudden mitigation laid upon the fields uncovered grey. Little runnels change their intonation. Tentative caresses stray round the earth from immensity. Roads run far into the land foretelling. Unexpectedly you find it, welling upwards in the empty tree. It's a very short poem called Early Spring. Lots of imagery about spring, about growing, about new growth, all that kind of thing. I'll read it one more time because you might be able to get it a little bit better second time as well. Early spring, harshness gone, and sudden mitigation laid upon the fields uncovered grey. Little runnels change their intonation. Tentative caresses stray round the still earth from immensity. Roads run far into the land, foretelling. Unexpectedly you find it, welling upwards in the empty tree. I like the last line, early spring. Unexpectedly you find it welling upwards in the empty tree, the buds coming out. The new bits of flowers and all that kind of stuff as well, snowdrops. I think that's a really lovely one to start off with. Okay, Early Spring by Rilke from the German poet Rilke. Okay, I'm going to go very far for the next couple of poems. Going over to the Far East. I've got a fantastic book, A Golden Treasury of Chinese Poetry, found in our store last week. And I got it sent over from my colleagues over in Salisbury Library. And there's lots of lovely poems in here. I don't know Chinese, but I do love the script. And you can see on the one side, you've got the Chinese script, and then the other, you've got the English script of the same poem. Okay, and this is from a famous Chinese poet from the Tang dynasty, around about 770 AD, so a long time ago. The thing about Chinese poetry, and I think also to an extent Japanese poetry, they're very sparse, short poems often. But you've got to take it into context with everything else that's going on as well in the poet's life at that time as well. I think that's kind of quite important. Tu Fu was a realist poet, a civil servant. The last sort of 15 years of his life were part of a terrible civil unrest in China in 755, the An Lushan rebellion. But it's very, very beautiful sort of short poem about gazing at the great mount. This is translated by John Turner. Gazing at the great mount. To what shall I compare the sacred mount that stands, a bulk of green that hath no end betwixt two lands? Nature did fuse and blend all mystic beauty there, where dark and light do dusk and dawn unite. Gazing, soul cleansed at thee from clouds unsprung, one may mark with wide eyes the homing flight of birds. Some day must I thy topmost height mount, at one glance to see hills numberless dwindle to nothingness. And again, a lovely last line there, climbing the hill. And then the tallest one, the great mount, and then looking. Hills numberless, dwindle to nothingness in the distance. I can picture that very clearly. Never having been to China, I've seen pictures. So that's from Tu Fu from the Tang Dynasty, a poem called Great Gazing at the Great Mount. All right, so I'm going to stay in the Far East for the next one. Japanese poetry, traditional Japanese poetry. I found 2 or 3 haiku, which are great, and I'm sure a lot of you might remember from your childhood or writing poems, or maybe you still write them. So the haiku are famously having 5 syllables, then 7 syllables, then 5 syllables. So very sparse piece of writing again. And these are quite playful ones and quite nice, okay? They're by a poet called Kobayashi Issa. And he goes by his nickname Issa, which I think is quite nice. It actually means cup of tea. So I thought I couldn't not do a poet who's called Cup of Tea. So 3 little haiku about spring mostly as well. Quite amusing and quite gentle. Okay, this one's translated by Stephen D. Carter. First one's called Spring, written in 1810. Blossoms at dusk, making the day that just passed seem long ago. Blossoms past, making the day that just passed seem long ago. Another spring one, another spring haiku. Garden butterfly, baby crawls up, it flies off. Crawls up, flies off. Garden butterfly, baby crawls up, it flies off. Crawls up, it flies off. Very gentle. And there's another one here, which I think is quite sweet as well. It's another spring one. It's called Watching Frogs Fight. So it's got by Kobayashi Issa, okay? It goes like this. You, skinny frog, don't go giving up just yet. Issa's here. You, skinny frog, don't go giving up just yet. Issa's here. Very sweet one. I like that one a lot. Okay. Hope you enjoyed that too. All right. Now I'm going to go back into Europe. I'm going to do a poem by Federico Garcia Lorca. Okay. He's a poet of the early 20th century. Very involved in lots of the early art movements of the 20th century. Knew Dali when he was at university, for example. A bit avant-garde. And very sort of a socialist, actually got caught up and was assassinated by the militia in the Spanish Civil War in 1936. This is The Old Lizard. It's a bit of a longer one, but I think it gives you a flavour of what it's like in living in South Spain in Granada, where Lorca came from. I hope you like this one. The Old Lizard by Federico Garcia Lorca. In the parched path I have seen the good lizard, one drop of crocodile, meditating. With his green frock coat of an abbot of the devil, his correct bearing and his stiff collar, he has the sad air of an old professor. Those faded eyes of a broken artist, how they watch the afternoon in dismay. Is this, my friend, your twilight constitutional? Please you lose your cane, you're very old, Mr. Lizard, and the children of the village may startle you. What are you seeking in the path, my near-sighted philosopher, if the wavering phantasm of the parched afternoon has broken the horizon? Are you seeking the blue alms of a moribund heaven, a penny of a star, or perhaps you've been reading a volume of Lamartine and you relish the plateresque trills of the birds. You watch the setting sun and your eyes shine. Oh, dragon of the frogs with human radiance. Ideas, gondolas without oars, cross the shadowy waters of your burned-out eyes. Have you come looking for that lovely lizard, as green as the wheat fields of May, as the long locks of the sleeping pools who scorned you and then left you in your field? Oh, sweet idyll, broken among the sweet sedges, but life, what the devil? I like you. The motto, I oppose the serpent, triumphs in that grand double chin of a Christian archbishop. Now the sun has dissolved in the cups of the mountains, and the flocks crowd the roadway. It's the hour to depart. Leave the dry path and your meditations. You will have time to look at the stars when the worms are eating you at their leisure. Go home to your house by the village of the crickets. Good night, my friend. Now the field is empty, the mountains dim, the roadway deserted. Only now and again, a cuckoo sings in the darkness of the poplar trees. That's The Old Lizard by Federico Garcia Lorca. I hope you enjoyed that one as well. It's very nice. Okay, that was translated by Lysander Kemp as well. Now, the next one isn't in translation. It's Emily Dickinson, a very famous American poet, a very hefty volume of the complete poems of all her works. This is she led a very secluded life in 1830 to 1886 in Amherst, Massachusetts, and is recognized posthumously as one of the great American poets. Not so much in her life because she was so reclusive. She only communicated and only had friends by mostly through her correspondence and her writing letters. And there's a very short one called I'm Nobody. I'm nobody. Who are you? Are you nobody too? Then there's a pair of us. Don't tell. They'd advertise, you know. How dreary to be somebody. How public, like a frog, to tell one's name, the livelong June to an admiring bog. Enjoyment of being nobody. Not like the frog. This one's not fighting like it was in Japan, but he's telling his name to the admiring bog, croaking, isn't he? I'm nobody. Who are you? Are you nobody too? Then there's a pair of us. Don't tell. They'd advertise, you know. How dreary to be somebody. How public, like a frog, to tell one's name the livelong June to an admiring bog. Emily Dickinson's poem, I'm Nobody, Who Are You? Quite beautiful and very sparse again. Lots of sparse poems today. So I'm going to go back to Europe. I've got two more. This is a slightly longer one. It's by C.P. Cavafy, Constantine Peter Cavafy, or Konstantinos Petru Cavafis. And he's a poet, grew up in Alexandria in Egypt with Greek parents. His parents were actually involved in the shipping trade. And he spent time in Liverpool as well. He was born in 1863, died in 1933. This is a poem about going home. So it's kind of apt to have towards the end of the session. And hopefully we're kind of going home and coming out of this year-long lockdown as well. And it's called Ithaka, this poem. Ithaca is where Odysseus was going in the Odyssey, the Homeric poem, returning to his homeland, who's going there throughout the whole of the book as well. So this is kind of reflecting on that and what your Ithaka may be, okay? Ithaca. As you set out for Ithaca, hope your road is a long one, full of adventure, full of discovery. Laestrygonians, Cyclops, angry Poseidon, don't be afraid of them. You'll never find things like that on your way, as long as you keep your thoughts raised high. As long as a rare excitement stirs your spirit and your body, Laestrygonians, Cyclops, and wild Poseidon, you won't encounter them unless you bring them along inside your soul, unless your soul sets them up in front of you. Hope your road is a long one. May there be many summer mornings when, with what pleasure, what joy, you enter harbours you're seeing for the first time. May you stop at Phoenician trading stations to buy fine things, mother of pearl, and coral, amber, and ebony, sensual perfume of every kind, as many sensual perfumes as you can. And may you visit many Egyptian cities to learn and go on learning from their scholars. Keep Ithaka always in your mind. Arriving there is what you're destined for. But don't hurry the journey at all. Better if it lasts for years, so you're old by the time you reach the island, wealthy with all you've gained on the way, not expecting Ithaka to make you rich. Ithaka gave you the marvellous journey. Without her, you wouldn't have set out. She has nothing left to give you now. And if you find her poor, Ithaka won't have fooled you. Wise as you will have become, so full of experience, you'll have understood by then what these Ithakas mean. Hope you like that. It's a metaphor for travelling through life, I think, isn't it, really? Enjoy the journey, not the end, as well. Ithaka by C.P. Cavafy. Okay. Right, I'm running out of space to put things, okay? The final book I'm going to do, there are lots of French poets. My French isn't good enough to read them in French either, sadly, so I am going to do it in translation only. That Cavafy poem was translated by Edmund, Keeley, and Philip Sherrard. This is a poem from 20th century French poems, a collection. It's translated by Robert Chandler. It's by Guillaume Apollinaire. Okay, Guillaume Apollinaire, born illegitimate of Polish and Russian aristocracy in Italy, in fact, in 1880, and then moved to France and lived most of his life in France. Thought of as a forefather of surrealism, very involved in Cubist and all those other early 20th century movements, a little bit like Lorca. He died of the great influenza outbreak in 1980. And this is a very short poem, and I think it's quite a nice one to finish with, especially if you're a budding poet. But for anyone, again, I think it's also useful. It's called Caterpillar. Caterpillar. Work hard, poets, work with good cheer. Work leads to wealth and freedom from fear. And butterflies, for all their graces, are merely caterpillars who persevere. Work hard, poets, work with good cheer. Work leads to wealth and freedom from fear. And butterflies, for all their graces, are merely caterpillars who persevere. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that selection of poems from around the world. We've gone all over the place, from Germany to China to Japan to Greece to America, Spain and France. Okay, you all take very, very good care of yourselves, and look out for Steph and Phil at the next Tea and Chat in a couple of weeks' time on Tuesday afternoon. Bye-bye to everyone. You all take care. Bye.